Greetings! It is I, Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on Shadowrun. Well, when we last left off, we were talking about the Matrix in the wireless world, and we dove into the world of technomancers, those that can manipulate the Matrix with their minds alone, with no technological assistance. Let's talk about sprites. So sprites are semi-autonomous constructs created from the very fabric of the Matrix, answering the call of the technomancer. These semi-autonomous programs are what we call sprites. Some view them as virtual pets, others as virtual friends, and even others as spirits of the machine. Their true origin is unknown. Their true existence is a mystery, but any attempt to analyze them shows them as some kind of combination of data view them as complex, unusual programs formed out of almost nothingness within the Matrix. Their icons range from incredibly cute to downright bizarre, but it is already known that if you're talking in game terms, they are equivalent to what an agent would be. They have a rating similar to what an agent would have for a pilot program when you're breaking it down. And there are 5 types of sprites that a technomancer can summon. So when a technomancer wishes to summon a sprite, they must first choose the type of sprite and the rating of the sprite. Then they must take a complex action, making a resonance plus compiling test that is opposed by the sprite's rating. Each net hit you get on this test assigns you one task that the sprite can do for you. A technomancer can own only one unregistered sprite under their control at a time, and if you wish to have more, and especially to have longer tasks associated with it, you have to do the proper scripting and register your sprites, which is another task entirely, which you'll talk about in the future. Compiling is draining, and you will suffer fading for compiling. Now, a sprite has associated with it a number of jobs that can do for you, or tasks as they're called. Any kind of continuous job, any kind of continuous thing that your sprite will be doing in the name of you, effectively is a single task. So a task is basically a continuous service. Now, when you compile your sprite, that is when you figure out the number of tasks your sprite will have for you. Your sprite will complete the tasks to the best of its abilities, and it will continue those for up to 8 hours, or until all of its tasks have been completed. Which either of those when either it completes all its tasks, or 8 hours pass, it will de-res itself into the nature of the Matrix once more. The only way to keep it going after this period of time would be to register the sprite. If it still had tasks remaining when the 8 hours is up, you lose those tasks that will still de-res. Now the thing is, a sprite will only take tasks from the technomancer that compiled it. The exception to this is if another technomancer attempts to use spoof upon a sprite, they can successfully basically trick it into thinking you're the technomancer and give it different tasks. A hacker cannot spoof a sprite. The nature of the sprite is so different from the programs that a hacker uses, it does not work. Like agents, a sprite leaves a data trail that connects back to the technomancer that created it. Now, a continuous use of a sprite's specific power is considered a task. Any kind of changes in the parameters of whatever task it is currently doing is considered using another task. If it is engaged in cyber combat, one bout of cyber combat, no matter how many opponents there are, is considered a single task. Now, a sprite must accompany the technomancer that compiled it. If a technomancer leaves the node that the sprite is in without it, or leaves the Matrix, it basically fades back into the Matrix itself until it is recalled by the technomancer. A technomancer could also choose to have it fade into the background and call it back anywhere within that 8 hours. So regardless if you left it on its own, or if you chose to have it fade into that background, you can call it back anytime within that 8 hours that it still would exist within, with a simple action. A sprite can only access other nodes if you send it on a remote task. A sprite sent on a remote task can be sent to another node that the technomancer is not within. Basically, it can be sent out somewhere else. It can only access public nodes or private nodes if it has the proper passkeys, or has the ability to hack in and basically exploit its way into said node. It is important to note there, if you send a sprite on a remote task, all other tasks that you had for that sprite are forfeit. Once it goes on a remote task, you give up all the other ones. Now, a technomancer has a mental link with any sprite that it has compiled. This mental link basically allows the technomancer to share data with that sprite. So if the sprite should gather data from some location, it could instantly send it back to the technomancer. The technomancer would also know if a sprite should be destroyed, then it will register that occurs. If the technomancer leaves the matrix for whatever reason, the link is temporarily severed. The sprite will either continue with whatever task it was appropriate or fade into the background depending on the situation it was in. Once the technomancer re-enters the matrix, they can attempt to basically reconnect with it using a test. Re-establish that link with their sprites. Now that's it for today. I talked about sprites. I went over some of the basics of sprites. The process that you take for creating a sprite, the tasks the sprite will go on, talking about unregistered sprites and the tasks they have, and the possibility for remote tasks. In the next episode, I'm going to talk about registering sprites, sprite types, and sprite powers. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you would say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows support the channel, the empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon. Link description below. Regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.